When the Lords of the Fallen was first announced, I was quite excited to see what studio would be throwing their hat into the Souls genre. When I found out that Hexwork was the developer behind it, I became quite skeptical. Having looked back at their previous IP, Lords of the Fallen, I was less than impressed. However, I decided to keep an eye on the game while remaining skeptical. And then finally, on October 13th, 2023, Lords of the Fallen was available on PlayStation 5. I'm just some guy on the internet, and here are my thoughts on Lords of the Fallen, an attempt at greatness. This video contains story spoilers. If you do not wish to get spoiled, you have been warned. The game opens with a dark crusader named Isaac running away from a creature known as the Light Reaper. And in a last-ditch effort to save himself, he tosses the umbral lamp and proceeds to get murked anyways. Thankfully, the lamp falls on a pile of corpses and you become the lamp bearer. And just like that, you're off to the races in the hopes of stopping, or in my case, releasing an ancient evil god named Adir. Not to be confused with Adir. This is a Souls game in every facet, including the story. As its predecessors before it, the story is told through character dialogue, environmental storytelling, and item descriptions. I have excellent news for anyone who enjoys lore hunting. When finding an item, you will get the bare minimum information of that item. However, if you increase a certain stat, which would be Radiance or Inferno, you will gain more information on the item. Some people might find this tedious, but I found it incredibly immersive. It only makes sense for someone who studies Inferno magic to understand items that have an Inferno nature. The story is your classic good versus evil, keep the bad guys locked, make sure the good guys stay in power. It has some merit, can be interesting at some points, but I would say that my interest in the story was skin deep at best and completely lost to what I was doing or what my objectives were at worst. The story definitely won't be winning any awards anytime soon, but it was compelling enough for me to go and hit things. You do have multiple endings which unlock new starting classes, however the endings are quite lackluster. You get a black screen and some text. Gameplay mechanics. Jumping into gameplay, it is by far the easiest and most accessible Souls-like I've ever played. Player speed is unmatched for any Souls game I've ever played, and the game is quite generous with iframes and the distance that the player can dodge. You have a light and chargeable heavy attack that does posture damage. You also have an option of one-hand or two-handing your weapons. The game is lacking in movesets from weapon to weapon, but you do have a healthy amount of options to choose from. Where we begin to see changes in mechanics is with the parry and blocking. Parrying is more forgiving than most, however if you block or parry enemies' attacks, you will still take wither damage. Your withered health will not go down as long as you don't take any direct hits, making combat a lot more forgiving. But if you take one hit from any enemy, you will lose all of your withered health, making the smallest of encounters feel dangerous. Luckily, your withered health will not go down with time, and you do regain big chunks of health when landing attacks, including ranged and spell attacks. Where the game really stands out is with the spell and ranged attacks. Using a bow or something of the sort actually works like mana. Every time you die or rest at a Vestige Seed, you will regain all of your ammunition. Gone are the days of farming for arrows. This is a welcome change, and I hope more games follow suit. The Lords of the Fallen manages to do something that no other Souls game has managed. I played a caster for the very first time. I have never enjoyed the way spells work in the Souls games. Having to manually flip between spells until you get the right one was more than just annoying. It made me reluctant to even try playing a caster. But this time around, oh boy did I have a good time as a caster. By holding down R2, all of your equipped spells will pop up and are assigned to 3 face buttons and 2 shoulder buttons. Not to mention, you can cast multiple spells back to back with a good sense of flow between them. Umbral. For those of you who do not know, there are 2 game worlds running at the same time. The Land of the Living and the World of Umbral. When you die or choose to go to, you will be transported to the World of Umbral with 0 loading time. The world of Umbral is not welcoming, filled with eyes and infinitely respawning enemies. Finding a way out is your top priority. That's until you find out that in Umbral you can find special items, secret passageways, and memory fragments containing events from the past, making Umbral more appealing. However, while in the Land of the Dead, it will only be a matter of time before you start getting hunted down by a nearly unkillable enemy. Entering is quite easy, but leaving can be quite a challenge. You either have to find a Vestige Point or an Umbral effigy. Now that we've spoken about Umbral, let's chat about the Umbral lamp. The lamp has a few uses, most are for puzzle and exploration, but some are for combat. Holding up the lamp will allow you to peer into Umbral without having to dive into it, making sure the jump is worth it. You can soul flay enemies, opening up the baddies for tons of damage, or even just yeeting them off a platform. It is also used for puzzles. You can equip different eyes to your line, giving a passive buff. Its most important attribute is its ability to carry umbral seeds. The seed is a portable temporary vestige point that you can place in certain areas in the game. Lastly, my favorite mechanic in the game, it helps you pick up souls, because souls don't come to you automatically. Yay! Such innovation. Enemies and bosses. When it comes to enemies, it is definitely this game's weak point. There's a serious lack of enemy types. You go from area to area and you will find the same grunt over and over again. They do get a recolor and sometimes additional moves, but you can see the repetition come quite often. You will find the same enemy that you fought in the beginning of the game at the very end. The only difference being is that they have more health and do more damage. For a game that expects you to play multiple times, the enemies are seriously lacking in variety. Luckily, all the bosses feel different from one another. They were fun to fight and a great way to end the level. Not to mention that the rewards you get for defeating them makes the entire ordeal worth it. Although the mini bosses are lacking. They are simply regular enemies with a boss health bar. More often than not, when you beat a mini boss, you will immediately fight it again as a regular enemy, killing the sense of progression that you would normally get. Environment and side content. The game is very reminiscent of older Souls games. The areas are very labyrinth-like. Getting lost and confused was all too common experience for me. I would have appreciated a little bit more guidance at the very least, or a functioning map. You do have a good amount of biomes, and the curious player will often be rewarded with armor, spells, or weapons, making exploration worth it and fun. My issue lies with Umbral. Regardless of where you are, when you enter Umbral, everything looks the same, adding to the confusion and taking away from the beauty of the game. If you're bad at Souls games like myself, you'll be spending a lot of time in Umbral, making most areas in the game feel similar. Luckily, there's an abundance of shortcuts to find and use, making backtracking much less tedious and actually fun. As for the side content, it is not a strong point in the game. You are more or less given a few vague statements about what you have to do, and that's it. There were a few moments in the game where I had started a side quest and wasn't even aware of it. Let's not forget how easy it is to mess up and lock yourself out of completing a side quest with little to no warning. In my first playthrough, I killed an NPC by giving them an item that was meant for them. I had no idea this item would kill them, nor was there any indication that it would have. The game has a journal, so I don't see why we couldn't at least keep track of the quests we're doing in that journal. Final thoughts. Lords of the Fallen was truly a mixed bag for me. The story left me feeling unsatisfied and uninterested in what happens next. As for the combat, it was the first Souls game to ever make me play a ranged build, which is saying something. The environments are great and fun to explore, but the side content doesn't compel me to explore. When the game came out, I dropped it after 15 or so hours, and I felt like I had wasted my money. Now, I have 86 hours on the game. And that's while working a full-time job. Why? Simply, the developers care about the game. Before I had time to release my video, the devs released updates that ended up tackling most of the issues I had, making my previous script completely irrelevant, which goes to show just how much the developers care about their game. The Lords of the Fallen may not be the From Software killer it was attempting to be, but it has great potential. With the continuous updates and upcoming free DLC, I look forward to seeing what Hexwork does in the future. I'm just some guy on the internet, and these are my thoughts on Lords of the Fallen, an attempt at greatness. Alright, thank you for making it to the end of the video. If you got to the end of the video, you know, hit that like button, hit subscribe, do all that jazz, and leave a comment saying a deer, not a deer. And yeah, I guess I'll see you guys soon. Ciao.